think I need a clicker. Great. Thank you. All right. Hi. Whoa, too many people. Great auditorium. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Thanks, PLG, for inviting us. Thanks, GWI, for being a sponsor and giving me the opportunity to be here. Who am I? I'm George. I'm the Senior Vice President of Engineering at GWI, so I oversee the development, plus the DevOps and the QA teams in GWI. And today, we're going to have a journey. I'm going to take you on a journey from software development to actual product customer value. And what do you really think your teams deliver? So let's focus first on why software delivery is important. We won't delve too deep, but it needs to be stated that we need high-performing teams for the journey to be successful. Because only last year, 2023, 90% of the global data were created, and that's huge. And people, since last year, since actually 2022 going to 2023, they're using their mobile apps and their mobile phone 5 times more. I'm guilty, although I try not to. So, you know, it's very hard to ignore the need for software. It's very hard to ignore the need that we need to ship faster, and we need to tame the needs of our customers. But that comes with a lot of problems. Some of them you list here. I hate text on slides, but I had to. And if you noticed, most of these bullets, apart from a few probably management fallacies like the ship it fast and why we think that's important, come from the lack of understanding user needs. Either your user research is stale, you don't have a design system, you haven't done any client feedback. That feedback maybe exists but doesn't reach the development teams, doesn't reach the product manager within that team, and things like that. So these needs to be solved, especially now where, you know, the market is not doing great, right? We've passed the era of talking about growth. Netflix actually announced that they'll stop reporting the number of users on their annual earnings. And that brought back this discussion. Hopefully, most of you have seen that picture. How many of you do know that picture? All right, then I'll talk about it a bit. So last year, there was a debate about how we can measure developer productivity, although Martin Fowler, that great person of our era, has declared from 2003 that it's almost impossible. But because, as I said, the era now is not the era of profitability and growth, it's an era where everyone is looking into our balance sheets, and they're looking if we are, you know, EBITDA positive, cash net positive, and all this stuff. People started to say, all right, why are we paying these people that are writing the software, and do we pay them maybe more than they deserve or whatever? So let's measure what's their actual output. And then there was a McKinsey research that was talking about metrics like lines of code, features released per quarter, features released per sprint. And there are 2 very clever guys, which I both admire, Gegerly and Kent Beck, bashed that research, saying that, you know what, that's really old ways, and we stand by Martin Fowler. You cannot really measure it like that. So they proposed this mental model. Yes, line of code, feature releases, stuff like that, measure the effort, but there's very little things you can measure about output and outcome, where DORA metrics are coming. And I hugely propose you to study and start implement DORA metrics in your firm. But there's still nothing about impact. And measuring impact is actually what will drive us through that journey to prove that we can actually get to value through software delivery. And the main reason all these misconceptions exist are based on how people are actually thinking about us as engineering departments. What's their perception of us? It used to be cost on the mainframe era. It's the necessary evil. We need a developer team to make our bank or our insurance firm or whoever was using mainframe code back then to, you know, produce money. Then it was the .NET era, the .com era, which is, all right, these guys are probably look cool. They produce entertainment, websites, long hair, glasses, sitting in the basement, and they're doing all this cool stuff. There is the iconic release of Windows with the Doom game together, all this stuff. That lasted for a couple of decades, and then suddenly it all became about, do they actually bring any money? Do they bring the right amount of margin based on the money we're paying them? So I think that's a lot of misconceptions that are coming through, this history of how engineers were perceived. So how can we shift now that mentality towards business value? So first, we need to understand what we mean by business value, and it might mean many different things depending on the company you work for. It might mean solving real problems. It might mean that you need to enhance the efficiency, provide automations, do things faster. It might mean that you need to produce a better user experience than the competitor, something that it's snappier and feels faster. It might mean that you need to have an impact on the society with all the new agricultural startups, for example, even here in Greece. These are all very valid purposes to provide value to a customer. And the main idea is to be hooked into your customer, be really necessary so that they cannot afford to lose you. All right, George, great, but can you provide a few strategies? So there are a lot of things you can do. The main thing is to build a framework where you allow 3 key components to exist. One is user-centric development. So especially if you're a B2C company, you need to start thinking about how's your product teams, your development teams talk with the designers? Do they have a user researcher? Do they have a list of user research interviews? Do they get access to your clients? Do they participate in demos? Do they understand why that button over there is not easily clickable or people cannot find it, even if your developers, and usually they do believe they're the smartest in the room, you need to prove them that it doesn't really matter. So the other key component of that framework is to not do agile the way you're doing it most probably, which is waterfall in disguise. And the third component is the data-driven decision, which means that we need to start measuring things, which as humans we're not very good at, and especially when it comes to estimations. But you need an example. I know you need, so to understand what we mean. How many of you are using Spotify? More that have seen the article of Gergerly, that's good. So I wasn't using Spotify until like 2 years ago, where everyone on Instagram and my friends, and I was both pissed and amazed, were having this Wrapped thing, like it mattered what they listened the whole year, but apparently it mattered to them. So I did some research and I was like, all right, let's check a bit the journey of Spotify, right? They started as a new innovation, if you remember back on that perception diagram. Cool kids that are doing a streaming service. It's a music streaming service. You can go in there, search for any kind of band or song you want. Boom. For a small price, you can even download it. Awesome. But then it was YouTube. You didn't even need to pay. Maybe you have to watch some ads, but all right, not a big deal. And then YouTube Music and everything. And I'm like, all right, probably they saw it, and what they did is they brought these 3 features. They said, all right, I'll make you look cooler by having a wrapped, nice image that you can share on post on your social media post. I'll get you the Discover Weekly, so every week, based on your listening habits and on the genres that you're listening, I'll present you with a list of songs you've never heard before. So you might discover something new. So here we go with a nice approach to discover data and discover music. And then your daily mix, which if you want to go to bed or you're out of the gym late at night, you can listen again your favorite songs during the day and I'll add 1, 2, 3 songs in there that are new, you haven't heard them before, but you might also like. These 3 features alone drive huge usage growth, brand engagement, and user engagement. And now half of the stadium, even more actually, you're listening to Spotify. And you're not listening to Spotify because it just streams music. You're listening to it, and you're using it because it provides real value through software delivery. Obviously, it's easier said than done. It's always like that. So here's a list of problems that we're going to find during that journey that we had also on that journey at GWI. And the main key I would like to focus here, in the interest of time, is that people are smart. So why are they doing these mistakes? Usually the people you work with tend to be smart, right? Because there are misconceptions behind this. So you need to understand the misconception in order to tackle it. So for example, I'll choose like, I don't know, ignore user feedback, which is my favorite. You'll hear many times, both developers and product managers, you have to admit it, saying that clients don't know, we know best. They have a need, they don't know how to solve it, we'll solve it best. They ask for that feature, no, they actually want B. Which might be true sometimes, I won't deny it. Yes, there are times that people don't know, or that you might not even have the user opinion, or the user opinion doesn't matter if you're a B2B, probably doesn't matter because you don't even talk with the user, you talk with the procurement department, and it's very hard to reach that user. But that is a misconception that you need to tackle, and you need to bring in somehow the actual user feedback or conduct user research interviews to see people using and let them express their opinion about your actual solution, your software. Neglecting maintenance and support is another favorite of mine, which the misconception there is like, it works on my machine, it worked during the development phase, it worked during the deployment, screw it, it will work forever. No, it will never work forever, you'll need to maintain it, it's gonna evolve, you will need to make it more scalable, it's never that easy. So there's a list of misconceptions behind each of these that we need to tackle. So that's the first challenge. We need to provide a framework within our firms and within our teams to tackle the basic misconceptions behind these failures. And then there is the challenges of the multidisciplinary teams, which I hugely believe in. I'm a huge advocate that, engineering on its own with a product manager is not the right team. That's the model we try to propose in GWI, and we actually have in place, which is, yes, product and engineering kind of take the leadership of the nucleus that's delivering the software and the solution, which is a value stream aligned team or a platform team, if you follow team topologies. These are terms that you can find in there. And we're using all these disciplines, right? You won't find QA and DevOps because we consider them as platform teams that they need to provide the tools to the rest of the value teams, the stream aligned teams. But it's never easy, all right? You have cultural differences, especially if you're teams sitting across the globe like we do. You have coordination and integration, so, there are dual speeds. The machine learning engineer is never as fast as the software engineer because the actual process of experimenting and training and gathering the data and evaluating just takes longer. So it's an exercise of patience, both for the engineers in the team and the machine learning engineers in the team. Then you have the data science, which, they also want time to play with the data, or they might not have the data and they need to make a leap of faith because, we still need to deliver. Resource allocation issues. Maybe your guild of machine learning or data science doesn't have enough resources to allow that team to work, so you need to pivot or execute something different. And obviously, there's also each discipline lacks some knowledge. So you need to do pair programming, you need to go a bit slower, you need to bring also the shift left mentality of the quality assurance and the testing, you need to shift left the security, so things tend to go a bit slower, and that's never easy to sell to the business. There are a few workarounds in all of this. I've heavily talked about the user-centric design and how you can apply or find a way to forget about user research. Find a way to bring the customer feedback closer to your teams. Agile, that needs to be truly agile. And here the main issue, apart from the waterfall in disguise, is to create the culture and the safety of failing. People are very, very scared to fail for some reason, which is actually the seed that started agile, right? To iterate fast, crawl, walk, run, all these things. If you're not willing to fail and pivot or success and gain success and then iterate, then you're not doing proper agile. And if your people are afraid to fail, then you have an issue there. And the middle image is about thinking in systems. We are human beings. That's on its own when we're forming teams. It's a social aspect of the system. We need to make money. Growth is not enough anymore. So there's the economic aspect of that system. And obviously there's the technical aspect of the system, which is how you can build your software. So you need to start thinking more in systems, and systems work with data. So you need to be ready to do some data-driven decision. Which brings me to the next topic, which is, all right, George, but how can we measure it? How can we measure value? Definitely don't measure it like that McKinsey paper. You can measure it with the new research. In the center, it's always the ROI, return on your investment, which means we have that team, we have that infrastructure, it delivered X value, we got back Y revenue. But there are all these other things that, thank God, I hear lately even more and more product people talking about them, like the Net Promoter Score, doing actual user interviews to understand if people are using a feature or not, if they're happy or not, gathering telemetry, getting your engineering teams to gather every telemetry that exists so that you can know user engagement, feature usage rate, then work with your sales and business intelligence or business data or however you want to call it, department to measure customer retention rate, predict some behaviors, trying to predict churn maybe based on historic data. These kind of measures show you not only if you actually provided value, if you got that user engagement, that brand engagement, but also if your efforts to create value are actually successful or not, which is also important. And to create a more holistic picture, that's something that needs to be supported across the firm. So your executive leadership and your senior leadership, they need to be aligned on a few strategic pillars. So we need, as senior leaders, make sure that we are aligned on where we need to focus, that we need to start measuring value, and that we need to take a few specific bets, which will lead to resource allocation decisions, and where should we put our 10x developer, where can we allow for an intern or a junior person, which team needs to have like the 2 pizza side, and which team can be 3 to 4 people for a while, which brings to performance measurement, which is not only performance of our teams and our people, but did we move the right needle? When we took the decision to put a bet, did we talk about the KPIs, the success criteria? Did we know what success will mean and what failure will mean? And obviously you have continuous improvement, both on the metrics and on your processes of delivering and on the processes of getting the client feedback, which also needs an investment. That's why we need the strategic alignment. And the rest, I've already talked about them. It's customer focus, which makes sense, and market competitiveness. It's never enough to think on your own. We don't live in an isolated world. So scanning the competition, understand where the market goes. We live in the AI era. We see years happening in weeks and months. If we just ignore it, then we're doomed to fail, right? We need to stay ahead of the game. Because if we don't, someone else will do, and customers are very easy to change. So it was a journey. I hope it was interesting. That journey talked about how we can get a software delivery company or team, get them into a framework, culture, mindset of user-centered design, thinking in systems, taking data-driven decisions, and feeling fail to save, in order to start thinking about and measuring the value we provide to our clients. And that's not enough, obviously. People tend to evolve, thankfully. We also evolve. Our customers evolve. Their needs evolve, like our needs. Our systems need to evolve. Our frameworks need to evolve. We need to continuously reiterate, reevaluate, admit that we maybe took the wrong bet, or we made a wrong strategic decision, and keep continuously improving. But we need to stick to these 3 pillars. We need to keep measuring so that we know that we make a mistake and go back in 6 months and fix it and correct everything, hopefully. That was it. Thanks a lot. Take care.